I'm ready to mount the elevator and rudder servos and finish up gluing the motor box. If you want to see how I do it, let's go ahead and zoom in and get to work. So this is from the top of the fuselage looking down, and this is where the elevator and rudder servos go. I used pencil to mark which one goes where, and I used arrows to remind me where the arms are going to go. So before I did this, I programmed these two 7954 servos so the center point would be as close to 90 degrees from the servo case as possible, and to give myself 45 degrees of throw in both directions. So check out the card in the upper right for a video on how to do that with the high-tech servo programmers. So we're fitting in the rudder servo and it doesn't quite fit. So this is sometimes the case, so I just take my X-Acto knife and trim a little bit of one of the ends, and unfortunately this will kill your blade, so don't use a brand new one if you don't need to, because you're going to have to replace it after this. So you just trim a little bit of it away, and then you can fit the servo down in there. So since I'll be using the number 3 servo mounting screws from RTL Fasteners, I'll use a 1/16 bit to make a pilot hole, and then enlarge that hole with a 3/32 bit. I will do one of the holes and then actually put the servo mounting screw in before I drill out the remaining 3 holes. So here I go with the 1/16, and I'll go to the rest of the servo holes. Alright, we cut that out, and we're just finishing the rest of the screws. So I found a little bit better camera angle, so hopefully this will not have my hands and wrists full-fledged in the screen, but we'll speed this up. Again, we need to carve a little bit out with the hobby knife to get the elevator servo in there. So here goes the elevator servo. And we will speed this up big time because it's the same process as with the rudder servo. 1/16 bit, enlarge it with a 3/32 bit, and then we can drill and fasten the rest of the mounting holes. And we're going to immediately take it back out, just like you see that the rudder servo is taken out, because we are going to get some CA and put some thin CA on these newly drilled holes just to give them a little bit of strength. Because this is thick plywood, there's nothing too much. Oh, failed. Yeah, I always warn about that tip, and I think the tip on the bottle is getting kind of dirty. I'm gonna have to clean that up because I could not get that long tip to stay on there, so I just bailed and was really careful with the regular bottle. But again, we're just putting some CA on these holes. There's not a ton of wood behind here. This is just thick ply, this deck, so we really need to keep these holes strong. So we'll dab a few drops of CA in all these holes. I always like to look in these holes and make sure that the CA gets absorbed. So here is 24 hours later, and we'll go ahead and mount the servos. So you are going to see a realization on camera. There's the rudder servo, and boom, I am now realizing, wait a second, that arm's a little bit too big, and there's going to be some issues. So we're going to have some problem solving to do. I don't have a really short dual arm for the rudder. I thought I was going to be able to use 2 of those blue aluminum arms that actually come with the 7955s and 4s, but the rudder needs a dual arm. So we'll be able to see, can we cut some of that off to make it fit, but we're going to have some trial and error. So that will be in the next episode as we hook up all these things. So I love using these servo washers. I'll put a link in the description. It makes the mounting a little bit cleaner and kind of provides that surface for equal pressure underneath the servo screws. So we'll go ahead and show you how these go on. My nice long bit and the DeWalt, and a little bit better camera angle to show you this going in. So we'll speed this up big time as we mount these servos. I actually have 2 different kinds of servo washers I like to use. Both are made by Seacraft. I'll have them again in the show description notes, but these are like these composite, I think it's called G10. What you see a lot of servo horns made out of, but Seacraft also makes titanium ones, or they look titanium. I usually put those on the nicer models. Again, I'll have links in the description. So here's how the rods, control rods, push rods go in. I replaced the factory clevises with the Dubro quick links, 256 quick links, and they just go in. You have to take off one of the ends, and I slid these, the 2 elevator push rods and the rudder push rods, from the back. All right, so for the rest of this episode, we're going to finish the motor box installation. So I took the motor off, and now that we know it needs to go all the way up into the front, and in fact we might need to put a spacer or 2 underneath the motor, we are going to epoxy and glue this sliding piece all the way forward. So what I'm doing is I took a pencil and I'm drawing some lines where this plate meets the side. So if you see as I slide it back, you can see exactly where that piece is going to rest. And I'm going to use that as a guide to place the glue on that front line, create a seam of glue, so as we push that forward into place, it creates a nice seal of glue as it moves forward. You'll see this. So we have this triangle stock that we are supposed to kind of brace the 4 corners. So I just took my little wood saw and cut 4 pieces to about the right size. You can see that's what I'm doing here. And you saw me kind of test fit the one. And again, it's triangle stock. It's a right angle. So there is one way for that to go on. There is a possibility of you putting that on in the wrong orientation and not sitting correctly. But all right, so here is the epoxy. I'm using the Scotch Weld 420, And you can see I'm dabbing the glue on that front line all the way around the motor box. And a little messy here, get some stuff dripping around. I was a little ashamed about that, but yeah, I'm gonna coat that front line. So again, as we push that into place, it should coat the sides and have a nice coat of that epoxy around all three sides there as we slide it into place. All right, so we push it forward, and by the way we did that, it creates a nice seam of glue in the front. And so now we take our triangle stock pieces. This is the wedge one. I wanted to wedge it in there to keep that forward as much as possible while this glue dries. So I didn't use that one, and I didn't throw it away just for this step. So now here are the cut ones. I cut 4 of them, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And we will now get the epoxy, coat the corners, and put these pieces of triangle stock in place, and then let it dry. We'll put these pieces of stock in place and let it dry. I skipped the front. You can see the front 2 are already there, and now I'm putting the glue in the back corners. And we'll take the triangle stock and just push it into place, get it nice and seated in there. The glue should keep it in place. Bada bing, we're good, and we're gonna let this dry for about 24 hours. Last step, just to kind of lock it in place just a little bit. I took some of my CA, and if I can get the cap off, I'll show you. There it goes. Just some of those pegs in the side, I just want to dab some CA in there, just kind of lock it. Hopefully that kind of creates a little bit of a bond before the epoxy or Scotch weld cures up. So you can see I'm just trying to get some in on the corners there. I did the front, and I'll do the back side just to get some in there. So we're good to go. And we will come back in a few days to finish all of the push rods, the connections to the servos, and we'll work out the little issue with the rudder servo and elevator servo. And we're that much closer to getting this Seagull Perestroika ready to fly. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in a few days.